Take a leak. Come over here and look at this.
What's up?
Look at this. What's that? Is that real?
Every murder has a victim. Every victim has a story. It starts and ends in the dead of night. New York, New York, the city of seductive promises and intoxicating nightlife.
New York City is glamorous and it's exciting. It's loud in a good way.
After dark, the Big Apple is known for some of the hottest nightclubs in the world. Celebrities, velvet ropes, and money, money, money. But in the wee hours, danger can elbow its way into even the most exclusive venues.
Even if a club is polished and glitzy and beautiful and has a lot of beautiful, well-off people in it, anybody could find their way in.
And sometimes, the most beautiful are also the most vulnerable. (1:30 p.m., Thursday, December 4th, 2008. Two young women arrive at Precinct 68 in the heart of Bay Ridge, Brooklyn.
We're here to report a missing person.
One of them tells police she hasn't seen or heard from her roommate, Laura Garza, in more than 2 days.
Over 2 days.
Not her roommate, not any other friends or family were able to get a hold of her on her cell phone. Matter of fact, her cell phone was going right to voicemail.
I have a text I want you to meet. Why don't you just come down here?
And this was out of character for her. And this is a girl who would contact her mother in Texas on a daily basis, just to say hi, to say goodnight, and nothing.
Karen Casa.
Nice to meet you.
Never mind.
Nice to meet you.
Her roommate, Karen, knows something must be very wrong.
You don't have a photograph, do you?
Yes.
She's brought a picture and tells police everything she can think of about Laura that might help them find her.
Short, long, dark, curly hair.
25, Latina, and gorgeous, Laura has just made the move to the big city.
At the time, she lived in Brooklyn. She was a native of Texas who had moved to New York during the past year.
6 months ago from McAllen, Texas.
Before she became enamored with New York, Laura was a country girl who lived with her mother in McAllen, Texas.
It's a small town. Everyone knows each other. It's not a big city.
Laura and her tight-knit family emigrated from Mexico when she was just 13 years old.
Her mother had always wanted to have her children in the United States just to give them a better lifestyle.
But Laura had her sights set on something bigger than McAllen.
I think she was just attracted to the big city. She just wanted to get out of McAllen, I guess.
And in the summer of 2008, Laura made a decision that would change her life forever.
She just visited New York, and when she came back, she said, I want to move to New York. I loved it. And I was like, what? You're crazy. And she's like, no, I'm serious. I just have to do this.
Moving to New York was a dream come true. She loved everything about New York.
Laura fell in love with the big city, with the lights, and she wanted to be part of that.
Laura always wanted to be a dancer, and New York was the best place to chase that dream.
She loved to dance, and loved to dance.
I think Laura thought of New York City as a place where any dream she had might be able to come true for her if she worked hard enough. And I think she was on her way to making that happen.
With Within a few months, Laura settled into a job at a shoe store and moved in with her best friend, Karen.
I was living in the studio, so when she did move in with me, we were really excited.
She had just gotten a new apartment that she was really excited about moving into. You know, her whole life was ready to unfold in front of her.
Like so many young newcomers to New York, Laura was mesmerized by the nightlife.
I think she loved the excitement. She was enjoying everything that New York City had to offer, you know, as any young girl would.
But on December 2nd, 2008, when Laura went out on the town with her friend from work, she could never have anticipated the terror the night would hold.
She texted me that night saying that she was going out with her friends from work. She didn't say when she was be home, but I knew she didn't have work the next day, so I figured, you know, she was gonna stay out.
But the next morning, Laura hadn't made it home.
I woke up and she wasn't there. You know, I didn't hear her come in throughout the night, but I woke up and called her, and, you know, her phone was off.
Hey, Laura.
I texted her and, you know, got no response.
Give me a call back, wondering where you are.
Karen knew that it was unusual for Laura to be completely out of touch all night and into the next day.
Laura would not just disappear. Laura would call.
She was a person who was always on her phone. There was no Facebook activity. There was nothing. Nobody knew where she was.
Karen's concern continued to grow, especially when night fell, and there had been no sign of Laura in over 24 hours.
That next evening, Laura was supposed to meet her roommate at the Rockefeller Center tree lighting.
There was no sign of her. I decided, you know, if she's not here by tomorrow morning, I have to do something about it. I have to.
When the sun came up the following morning, Laura had been missing for nearly 2 days.
Hi,
Karen called the shoe store looking for her,
I'm Laura's roommate.
but no one there had heard from Laura either.
Her friend got on the phone and that's, you know, started crying right away and said, you know, she was with me and I left her.
You were with her? Where?
That, you know, those are the words that, you know, haunt me to this day. And that's when I realized, you know, something bad had happened. And I said, we need to go to the police.
She didn't come home the night before.
Visions of the worst-case scenarios flashed through her friends' minds. They're desperate to know what really happened to Laura Garza in the dead of night. Coming up, investigators piece together Laura's last night in New York. What they find shocks her loved ones.
She's right there.
Right there?
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, they find Laura on surveillance video just after 4 a.m. leaving the club with 2 men.
That's Laura.
It's the early afternoon of December 4th, 2008.
How can I help you today?
25-year-old Laura Garza, a recent transplant to New York City, has just been reported missing. Laura was with her co-worker Lori on the night she disappeared. Lori recounts to police what little she knows about what happened.
And the last place that we went to.
She picked Laura up after her shift at the shoe store, and they headed out for the evening.
Laura had gone out clubbing with a coworker. They had gone to a few bars in and around Lower Manhattan.
That night, Lori and Laura found their way into Chelsea, the heart of New York's hip and exclusive nightclub scene. After bar hopping for the evening, the two young women wound up at the Marquee, a nightclub in Lower Manhattan where Lori's friend got them in right around midnight.
When the New York City Police Department first gets the case, they learned that the last place that she's known to be is at the Marquee.
A glitzy hotspot The Marquee is known for celebrity appearances, long lines, and exclusivity.
At the time, in 2008, this was one of the hottest nightclubs in New York City, and on any given weekend, hundreds, if not thousands, of young people would go there to dance and hopefully meet people.
There was a time, not long before Laura went missing, when the nightlife in New York was especially dark. But then the crime rate began to drop. People started to feel more at ease.
We assumed that it was safe to go to the nightclubs and to partake in the nightclub scene, and then things started happening.
2 women were brutally murdered after disappearing from some of the city's most glamorous hotspots.
These murders really opened our eyes to the fact that there is this underbelly to the nightclub scene that isn't being advertised or promoted.
Could the crime wave be starting again? The NYPD and Laura's friends go to the Marquee to find out if something happened inside the club that led to Laura's disappearance.
Do you recall sitting there?
Inside the Marquee's security headquarters, one club employee said she saw Laura that night, and that she looked like she was having a good time. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary.
The Marquee actually has a fairly sophisticated surveillance system. There's many cameras.
The detective and Laura's friends hope the footage will reveal what happened to Laura inside the club.
They look at the surveillance video to see, number one, what time she left. Did she leave with anybody? You know, did something happen to her inside the bar?
The cameras pick up a lot of action, but there's no sign of Laura at first.
Stop. Do you see her?
Yeah.
They finally spot Laura on one of the interior cameras. Lori recounts a crucial detail about the night Laura disappeared.
Around 2 o'clock, her coworker decided she wanted to go home. And she tried to get Laura to go home with her. Laura had met somebody and did not want to leave. The coworker said, fine, I have to go. And she left.
When her friend did decide to leave, she did say that she saw Lauda with a male. She couldn't make out who it was, but she did say that she was talking to somebody else.
Lori finally spots him.
In the interior surveillance video, you can see Laura sitting with this young man. It does not seem out of the ordinary. It's a club scene. It was busy that night. There was lots of people dancing and drinking.
Guys, I figured we'd switch you some beer.
The guy Laura is with is well-dressed, handsome, and has his own table at the exclusive Marquee. Not an easy thing to get.
This is not just a club that anybody can show up to and get into. They like good-looking women, men with money.
And some of these men are definite regulars.
Yeah, I know that guy.
One of the managers at the Marquee recognized him
Mike.
as being somebody he knows to be Mike.
You know his last name?
He says, I don't know his last name, but he's here on a halfway regular basis. So, and a matter of fact, I have his cell phone number.
562.
The manager gives the detective the man's cell phone number, and they keep looking for the most crucial piece of evidence the footage could hold: Laura's exit from the club. What they finally see is alarming.
She's right there.
Right there?
Mm-hmm.
Who's that guy? Do you know who that is?
Ultimately, they find Laura on surveillance video just after 4 a.m. leaving the club with 2 men.
I don't know who that guy is.
And no one has any idea who the second man is.
When I first saw her leaving in the video, I thought, that's her. But then it became, who is that? And, well, where is she?
We need to find out who he is.
But the cameras only show a glimpse of what happened, and the mystery remains.
You don't see if, like, they're holding her by the arms. You don't see them get in a car. You just see them walking into the darkness.
Coming up, investigators get conflicting reports.
We have Mr. Maley telling one story,
Together, and then we went our separate.
and the friend telling another.
100% sure she was in the car.
One of them is lying.
"25-year-old Laura Garza went missing from the Marquee nightclub in the early morning of December 3rd, 2008. Surveillance footage shows her leaving the club with 2 men.
She's right there.
Right there?
Mm-hmm.
At this point, anybody who saw Laura leaving or left with Laura is a person of interest. Has to be spoken to, have to be located.
On the afternoon of December 4th, NYPD detectives set out to learn everything they can about the men who left with Laura. They start with their first lead, a club regular named Mike.
Hello.
Armed with a cell phone number and a first name, NYPD contacted him and asked him, "Hey, Mike, you were last seen with this young lady. Where is she?"
Where she is?
Where she is?
And
No.
his answer to them was, well, yeah, we left the club together, but we went our separate ways. That she was going to a friend's house on the Upper West Side, and myself and my friend went back upstate to Newburgh, and I haven't seen her. I don't even know her name. I think she might be from Texas.
Mike, whose full name is Michael Maley, lives about an hour north of the city. He doesn't have much to say about Laura, but he does provide the name of his friend.
At that point, identifying the friend that was with Michael Maley was extremely important, and they were able to do that and speak with him.
The friend has a more detailed, and it turns out, different timeline of events.
Marquee 2 nights ago?
Yeah.
They learned from the friend that the 2 of them had left the club around 4 a.m. with a young lady. He described her as being pretty, with dark curly hair, and the friend tells the police that he was very intoxicated, that they got into Michael's silver Infiniti SUV and traveled back up to Newburgh.
You ready to go home? Okay.
He says he doesn't remember the ride home because he passed out in the back seat. What this gentleman tells us is he wakes up to Michael Maley turning around from the driver's seat, shaking him to wake him up.
Here. You. You good?
Yeah.
But what the friend saw when he woke up doesn't jibe with Michael's story, that they left Laura in the city.
He woke up and saw Laura Garza, and he recognized her. He remembered her dark curly hair. He remembered, her beautiful eyes. He remembered who she was.
The girl was in the passenger seat. And
The friend says that Laura did ride upstate with them and was in Michael's car in an upstate parking lot at approximately 5 a.m.
Michael's friend tells us that Laura and Michael were close. They were acting very friendly with one another. She didn't seem in distress. And matter of fact, he says that when he got out of Michael's car, he stumbled and they laughed at him. He watched Michael and Laura pull out of the McDonald's parking lot, and that's the last time he ever saw her. We have Mr. Maley telling one story and the friend telling another. Somebody's lying.
The cops look further into Maley's friend.
Did he come home last night?
They talk to his family and co-workers and do a background check.
Saw him come in, you said about
Turns
5
out,
o'clock in the morning.
he's a credible guy with a clean record. Police then turn to Michael Maley. At first glance, he seems to have everything going for him.
This is a person who owned his own business, dressed nicely, drove nice cars, and many people thought was very good looking. Kind of a ladies' man.
He enjoyed the finer things in life.
He was a real party boy. He loved to go out. He loved the nightlife, and not just any nightlife. You know, a local bar in Orange County was really not good enough for him. It had to be the Marquee in Manhattan or something equivalent.
But a more thorough check reveals another side to Michael Maley.
From the outside, you think he's a handsome 23-year-old man. He seems to be a stand-up citizen, and then we did a little digging, and then very quickly we realized that he actually had a very dark side to him.
We learned that he had been arrested for sex crimes in Rockland County that involved exposing himself and touching women while he was exposing himself. So now the NYPD is very concerned because not only do they know that he's lied to them, they learned that he was a registered sex offender, and that heightened the urgency to find Laura.
All sex offenders in New York are required to register their addresses with the state. The NYPD tracks down Mele's address.
They had contacted local police in the Newburgh area and asked the police to go to Michael's house and knock on his door and see if he was there.
But when police visit his home, they are told that he is not there and discover he's moved into a new apartment without notifying authorities.
They were very concerned for her welfare because of all that they had learned about him, about the lies that they have him telling them, and that they still can't find her.
The NYPD turns to the state police for help. Investigator Jan Golding arranges to meet the NYPD at Michael's apartment.
At that point, they briefed me on the entirety of their investigation, and I could tell from the tone of their voice that these detectives were very concerned, that they felt that this could quite possibly be a homicide.
Investigators don't have a warrant,
I think everybody's home.
but all evidence has led them to this building.
She could be in there. We didn't know yet. At that point, this was clearly something that was very serious. Really, this was a search to find somebody who was in distress, or possibly worse.
Laura?
Coming up,
Laura Garza, are you here?
the investigation uncovers shocking evidence.
When we got upstairs, the first thing I saw was large sections of carpeting missing from the hallway of the apartment.
"25-year-old Laura Garza came to New York to become part of the city's infectious energy, to dance, to meet new people, to support herself. But she disappeared into the night nearly 3 days ago. The NYPD has followed her trail 70 miles north to the apartment of Michael Mele, a registered sex offender last seen with Laura Garza in the dead of night.
Let's go.
The door to his apartment is unlocked.
Laura? Laura Garza, are you here?
When we got upstairs, the first thing I saw was large sections of carpeting missing from the hallway of the apartment.
There is not blood spatter around. There is no sign of a struggle. Everything is normal, except huge pieces of carpet are missing.
And when you start to put this all together, you have a missing young lady. You had to assume the worst.
This is a crime scene.
You had to assume that foul play had occurred.
And at that point, I think everybody became very concerned for what happened to Laura.
Let's look for Laura.
And that's when I realized that this case belonged to me. Because now we have a crime that occurred in Orange County. And I ordered everybody to get out, and we secured the apartment to get a search warrant.
New York State investigator Jan Golding and the forensics team return the next morning. There is no sign of Mele when they begin their search.
They looked in everything. That was the whole point, was to just collect as much as they could to try to find out if she had been in that apartment, if there was any sign of her.
Items from Mele's apartment, including fibers from the remaining carpet, are rushed to a lab for testing. But they reveal no sign of Laura. Not only has Laura vanished, but several items are strangely missing from Mele's apartment.
We know that there's a clothing hamper missing from the apartment. We know that there's a comforter missing. A large portion of their bath towels are missing. It tells us that something is being hidden. What's being hidden? Is it her? Is it her body? Is it evidence? Is it other evidence in this crime is gone missing?
Hello.
During the search, Detective Golding gets a call about a new development.
We got him.
You got him.
Michael Melee has actually turned himself in on an existing warrant for having an open container in a public park. But he is refusing to say anything about Laura Garza's disappearance.
We need him to talk.
His silence speaks volumes to Golding.
I have to assume if somebody doesn't want to talk to me about something, that there's something that could hurt them, something that they're keeping to themselves that would be helpful to my case, that they don't want to tell me. And I do have to assume the worst. I have to respect their right to remain silent, but I don't have to like it.
While the hunt for evidence continues, a large-scale search begins for Laura Garza.
The search for Laura is the biggest search that I've ever seen in my career.
The search involved hundreds of people. And over the course of, that first week and then subsequent weeks and weekends, the searches were massive.
Laura's family flies to New York to help in any way they can.
The Garza family was in New York. They were there to see these searches going on.
Of her disappearance.
The scene is devastating for Laura's family.
Ese momento te llenan de todo.
At that moment, I felt everything.
Desesperada por querer.
Anger, desperation, anxious to hear from her.
Le pedí a Dios por ella.
I asked God for her.
Le dije, Dios.
I told him, if you don't need her, please send her back to me.
It was heartbreaking. It was heartbreaking to have to talk to her brothers who are trying to put some closure to this, and to bring some justice to their sister.
It was sad. It was frustrating for them. Every time we would go out and do these searches, I know they had high hopes.
It was just hoping that she was alive.
The exhaustive search, covering hundreds of square miles, yields no sign of the beautiful young woman.
The areas that we thought were likely areas where we might find her were starting to dwindle.
But then, they find something that could unlock the mystery.
On one day, a large piece of carpet was found on the side of State Route 17.
Over here.
That was immediately interesting to the police.
The search team also finds a car mat and another small piece of carpet.
And it matched the carpet that was found in Michael Mealy's apartment. The parts that were missing, they could actually put it together and, make a whole carpet.
Those two pieces of carpet and that car mat were then sent up for forensic testing. And all three of those items revealed the presence of Laura's blood. And two of the pieces of carpet also had her hair on them.
Golding knows this is critical to the investigation.
In order for us to prove a crime, you have to be able to link your suspect and your victim. Now I had something definitively linking Laura Garza to Michael Mealy's apartment.
And that was huge. Now we knew.
While they continue to search for proof that Michael Melee is connected to Laura's disappearance, Melee is convicted for failing to register his address, something he was legally obligated to do as a registered sex offender.
Ultimately, he pled guilty to that charge and received 1 to 3 years in prison.
Knowing that Michael is in prison for a limited time, detectives work to build their criminal case against him for what they believe to be the death of Laura Garza.
No.
But the essential missing piece is Laura herself.
This is a circumstantial evidence case, which means there's no direct evidence. There's no eyewitness that saw him do it, and he has not confessed to doing it. The main piece of evidence is her. So without her, we cannot necessarily prove beyond a reasonable doubt that she is dead.
Eventually, it got to this point where, everyone sort of knew the same thing, that police had a ton of circumstantial evidence against Michael Mealy, but that they would never be able to pin him with the murder if they couldn't find Laura's body.
Out in front of us, I'm going to ask you to line up in the line.
The search for Laura continues, as the months drag on.
The search, it felt like forever for me. It was never ending, but I always hung on to that hope.
A year and a half of waiting, of not knowing if she was really, really gone.
And as we were searching and not finding anything, it seemed like we were that time was slipping away.
It does get to a point where leads were drying up. Everyone had been spoken to that might know something, and we still don't have her, and we're still not any closer to finding out what happened to her.
When over a year passes, and there is still no sign of Laura's remains, investigators are up against the clock, counting down to Mele's release from prison.
Something had to be done because I felt that we just could not let him get out of jail. As time went on and we couldn't find her, is this a case that we wanted to prosecute or try to prosecute without a body?
Grimmer and Golding both know that successfully prosecuting someone for murder without a body is nearly impossible. And if they were to lose, Michael Mele could walk away a free man for good.
It was very frustrating because I felt that we had this guy dead to rights. We just didn't have a body.
Coming up, finally, investigators get one thing they've been lacking all along: some luck.
And I knew right then, I said, if Michael Mele had been in the room, I would have said, I got you. Now I got you.
Hey, investigator!
Evidence is stacking up against Michael Mele, a registered sex offender last seen with Laura Garza.
I did. I had a great time.
But Laura's body still has not been found, making a conviction extremely difficult. While Mele is in prison on other charges, investigators are racing against the clock to find Laura's remains before he is released on parole. Then, one early spring morning in 2010, they get a call that could change everything.
Golding.
It was a Tuesday morning, and a trooper from Pennsylvania called me and said, hey, Jan, I think we have something you might be interested in.
These ATVers were driving around just recreationally. One of them hopped off of his ATV to relieve himself and then walked over by a tree. This gentleman looked down and saw what looked like a skull, and then looked around and realized that they were standing amongst other remains that were skeletonized.
And when I spoke to this trooper, he told me, he said, listen, these remains don't match any of our missing persons cases, any recent homicides. We just don't know who this person is.
They also found a watch with the body. The trooper was familiar with Laura's case and started to connect the dots.
I found a picture of Laura.
And this trooper had done a lot of good work on his own. He went online and he pulled up some old media photos that had been printed of Laura Garza. And one of the photos showed her wearing a Michael Kors watch. And that's the same exact brand model watch that they had found with these remains. And I knew right then, I said, if Michael Mele had been in the room, I would have said, I got you. Now I got you.
Within a week, DNA tests confirm that the remains found in the back of a Pennsylvania field do in fact belong to the bright young dancer who'd come to the city only months earlier to pursue her dreams.
Finding out that it was actually her, it's hard to explain what that felt like. First, I felt sad for her family. Then I felt excited that we could proceed with the case. And then I got really mad because I thought about him dumping her there. And the best thing that could happen to a prosecutor is to get mad, because then it's on.
That meant everything for the case against Michael Mealy because finally they had the body. They had proof that Laura Garza didn't just disappear, didn't just run away, but that she was dead. And so this helped them a lot with the case, and they were able to bring up murder charges against him.
Now that they have a body, Kelly Grimmer prepares to go to trial. She knows it will be a close one and spends months getting ready. But then, on a cold Friday afternoon, with the trial set to start on the following Monday, Grimmer gets a call.
Kelly Grimmer. I got a phone call from one of the defense attorneys proposing a negotiated 23 years for a plea to the manslaughter in the first degree. I was shocked.
Kelly Grimmer and her team face a critical decision.
In doing an analysis of the risks involved, we really felt that we didn't have a choice other than taking the plea.
I was satisfied with that plea bargain. That was a guaranteed number. It was a guaranteed conviction, and it meant that all of our work was actually for something.
On January 23, 2012, after over 3 years of silence that left Laura Garza's loved ones tortured and investigators baffled, Michael Mealy finally takes the stand.
Guilty.
As part of the plea bargain, Mealy has to admit only to the crime he's pleading guilty to:
I do.
manslaughter in the first degree.
This is not the same as a cross-examination. I really do not have the leeway to ask all the questions that I would like to ask.
Mr. Mealy.
I basically asked him, you met her at the club, you went back to your apartment, he admitted that, and I asked him what happened in the apartment.
There come a time when you engaged in some sort of altercation with her.
There was a long silence, and then he started to talk.
Laura was in my apartment.
He explained to the court that he had brought Laura home, and at some point while she was in his apartment, she saw a picture of his girlfriend.
Who is this?
What?
He said she became upset about that.
You brought me here when you had a girlfriend?
And at one point, she started to get loud and saying that she wanted to go back.
Lower your voice.
Well, I need to go home now.
I put my hand over her mouth and partially over her nose. And once she stopped yelling and moving, I knew something really bad had happened.
And after that, he panicked. He didn't know what to do. And he stuck her in a laundry basket, put her in his car, and took her to Pennsylvania. It was a very terrible feeling to see him face to face and to hear what he had to say.
I put her in a laundry basket.
Laura's friends and family are skeptical that Michael Mealy's account gives the full story of what happened in his apartment on that dark winter night in December 2008.
When he says that she freaked out because she saw a picture of his girlfriend, I don't think that would have happened. I think she probably did freak out for another reason, like, you know, like, where am I, or what are you doing?
I need to go home. If Laura became angry at some point in his apartment, it's hard to know why that could have been. Did something happen that she didn't want to have happen? Had she started off consenting to certain activity and then changed her mind?
I didn't want to drive
There's
back.
a lot there that we're just never going to know.
That's the one little piece of this case that still sticks with me, is that I don't know if I will ever know exactly what happened to her.
And there is another question that continues to haunt everyone who knew Laura as a cautious woman who would never leave a club with two strange men. How did she end up in Michael Mealy's car in the first place?
Knowing the way Laura is, I can't believe she would have left with them. Is there more to it? Did these men give her something in her drink or in her water, and they were able to lure her?
After seeing Michael Mealy giving her drinks in the surveillance footage, her loved ones develop a theory about what happened.
I don't think Laura was in her right mind. I think there was more to it.
They gave something to my daughter, in her drink, in whatever she was drinking, because she was not like that.
While that's certainly not outside of the realm of possibility, there is no evidence that he put anything in her drink.
After having lost Laura to a registered sex offender who was in violation of his probation, her loved ones hope to see tighter restrictions on known sex offenders.
There are these dangerous people everywhere, but I think if we do have stricter controls over, them and their whereabouts, then maybe, things like this wouldn't have happened. Maybe Laura would still be with us today.
On February 22nd, 2011, Laura's remains are finally returned to her family.
Even though they brought me the ashes, I'm still waiting for her to come back. I carry her image every day. I see her smile. That will never go away. I carry her inside, her happiness, a beautiful image from the heart, from inside.
As Laura's friends and family try to move on with their shattered lives, they hold on to the hope Laura's tragic death will be taken as a warning to young women everywhere who might come face to face with danger in the dead of night.
The advice I would give them is to be careful with those men who are wolves in sheep's clothing.
Any man out there that, he may be dressed nicely, he may be talking appropriately, but, you just don't trust. And it's hard not to. But once it happens to you and to your family, you learn from it.
The fact of the matter is, how could Laura Garza have known that Michael Mealy was this horrible person? On the outside, he was a good-looking young man who was spending a lot of money at the club. He drove a nice car. It just goes to show you that not all monsters are ugly.
And, perhaps a young woman who's out and having a good time and thinking about leaving with someone who seems like a great guy, who has a great job, who's dressed nicely, who, says all the right things and certainly doesn't seem like a creep. Maybe if they think about Laura and say, maybe I won't. I think that would make Laura happy.